So coming up this weekend is going to be a UFC event I am really excited about because it is in front of a crowd. Finally, UFC Fight Night Blanchfield versus Fiorot taking place in Atlantic City in front of a crowd. I'm looking forward to it, man. These Apex events, they just don't hit the same anymore. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of them, and I will make a video about my solution for these Apex events, but unfortunately that probably won't come out today. It won't come out this week either. I just finished writing and submitting my assignment literally about 20 minutes ago at the time I recorded this video, so I do apologize. I am a little bit tired, but today really is the only time I can record the video because I've got a test tomorrow, a test the next day, and a quiz the day after that. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, back-to-back tests. It's just a busy week for me, man. Unfortunately, that just is how the cookie crumbles sometimes. A lot of times I have just not busy weeks whatsoever, and sometimes I'm just full on, I'm just fully busy, and this is just one of those weeks. I'm going to be recording this video right now. Obviously, it's 10 p.m. I'm pretty tired. Let's get into it. Of course, for $10 per month, you can get a lot of premium content on the We Want Picks website, and you can get a 3-day free trial if you sign up using my code ARTEM. There you get an article that I write every single week about non-UFC content, such as PFL, Bellator, Cage Warriors, LFA, or just whatever else is on, you know. Every time I see something new on UFC Fight Pass, I usually write up something for that event because I'm pretty up to date with the regional scene, and with Dana White's Contender Series being scouted at the moment, I'm keeping my eye out, man. I'm keeping my eye out for the guys that I think that will be on the Contender Series this year. And you can find out who I think could be on the Contender Series every single week when I write those articles. You can cancel during the 3-day free trial, but the way that most people probably use the 3-day free subscription service is just to try out those tools that they do have. Of course, they've got the AI Fight Predictor as well, which is a lot of fun. But now let's get into it. Let's get into the first fight of the night. It's going to be Nate the Train taking on Jamall Emmers. You can't put Nate the Train in the Apex, man. He has to be in front of a crowd. I love Nate the Train. I was kind of hoping he was going to get an opportunity on one of the bigger pay-per-views coming up, or one that has just been at $2.99, because I think he's just a lot of fun, man. But he's still getting in front of a crowd at a pretty big event. And I do think he can beat Jamall Emmers, but this is a low confidence pick, man. And maybe there's a little bit of bias there, because I do love Nate the Train. I do just want to say that. But I think he's got a bad style for Emmers. Emmers is a guy that does like to strike from range. He likes to use his length. He likes to use his reach. And Nate the Train is just going to come forward, man. He's a very pressure forward striker. He can use takedowns if he needs to as well. He's definitely a pretty solid wrestler, but so is Emmers. Emmers got great takedown defense and good takedown offense as well. In fact, Emmers has regularly gone for takedowns in a few of his own fights. But Emmers doesn't fight the same when he's moving backwards. And that's what Nate the Train is going to do. Nate the Train is going to keep chugging forward. He's going to be moving forward. He's going to be throwing strikes. His chin's going to be up in the air, even though on paper he actually has a pretty decent striking defense. But he's going to get hit a lot. Emmers might be able to snipe him, man, but Emmers isn't a guy that I think of with just crazy one-punch power. I know he did knock out Buzukja, but I don't think Buzukja is the best fighter in the world, to be honest with you, and I think he's also on this card. But I like the Train. I think the Train's just going to keep moving forward. He's going to put Emmers on the back foot. Emmers doesn't look great on the back foot, so I think the Train gets it done. Nate the Train, an underdog to start off the card. He's plus 180. Jamall Emmers is minus 210. And a little spoiler alert, because there is a lot of underdogs to come, man. I'm picking a lot of underdogs on this card, and I picked a lot of underdogs last card. It worked out for me a little bit. I went 9-4. Quite a few underdogs won. I'm going to pick another one here. I'm picking Victoria Dudakova. Victoria Dudakova, you haven't replied to me in 10 months now. We've had a very, very brief conversation. I asked you about a dinosaur, and you haven't replied since. It's been about 10 months. May of last year, I think, is when I sent the message. I'm still waiting. But no hard feelings. I'm still going to pick her to win the fight anyway. I do think Dudakova's just a really good prospect, man. She's a really good wrestler, and she's very, very dominant in top control, and I just don't think Melissa Gatto is going to have the takedown defense to deal with Dudakova. Melissa Gatto is a fighter that doesn't have good takedown defense. She's not very strong for the weight class. This is also going to be at 125, so Dudakova's moving up, which is interesting. But I don't think Gatto is very strong for 125. I don't think her takedown defense is very good. I do think that her jiu-jitsu is very good and dangerous, and I do think her striking is good and dangerous as well. In fact, she really put herself on the map by getting a submission win over Carol Rosa in 2018, and then finishing Leonardo and Sajara Eubanks. Then she lost to Cortez, and then she lost to Lipski. And I thought her fight IQ against Lipski looked really bad, man. She made a lot of questionable decisions, and she ended up losing that matchup. Gatto is going to be the better striker on the feet. Dudakova, I don't think, is the very good striker, to be honest with you. But it doesn't really matter, because her wrestling is going to be good enough to take Gatto down, and I don't think on the ground Gatto is going to be able to put Dudakova in submission attempts that she's going to have to tap to. You know, I've seen Dudakova fight a somewhat similar style in Maria Silva, and it's a really good win that is aging really, really well. Maria Silva's a fantastic fighter. She beat Nunez by injury, to be fair, and then she beat Janu Frey with the controversy, but I can look past that. Dudakova, I'm there. We've talked very briefly. Anyway, let's move on. Ivo Aslan taking on Anton Turkalj. I'm gonna do it again, guys. I'm actually gonna do it. I'm gonna pick Anton Turkalj again. I'm going to. There's gonna be 3 underdogs in a row, by the way, because Dudakova is plus 135 and Gatto is minus 155. And we go into this fight because Ivo Aslan, I believe, is the favorite, or maybe he is the underdog actually. No, Ivo Aslan is the favorite, minus 125. Turkalj is plus 105. Yes, I'm picking Turkalj. They've fought before in the past, and that's not the only real reason. I will get into that. I'm just going to talk about Ivo Aslan for a second. I did pick him on the Contender Series, and as you guys may or may not know, for the Contender Series, I did a lot of research last year, man. I know my predictions were really bad. Trust me, I was watching tape. I was sitting down, man. I was really, really grinding out the tape study. And Ivo Aslan's tape study to start with wasn't very easy to find. And secondly, what I saw was very unimpressive in the way that I think a lot of it looks very dodgy. Very dodgy, especially his last couple of fights, man. I can't remember which one it is in particular. I believe it's this fight against Amilcar Alves. In this matchup, if you can find it, I think it's on YouTube, Alves just falls over and then gets finished by ground and pound to Ivo Aslan. Literally nothing happens. And then this Georgi Kabashvili guy, I think he's like 5'7", with a massive gut on him. 5'9" with a massive gut on him. And of course Ivo Aslan is going to beat him. He's got a losing record. He's short. He's fat. Ivo Aslan is 6'3" and absolutely bloody bulked up. Of course he was just going to win. Like he's fighting these guys with losing records. Not just anyone with losing records. Guys that I could probably get off my fat ass and beat in the boxing ring right now. Like, what's going on, man? And I just think Ivo Aslan, man, his level of competition is just so low level. And I don't even think his striking is that great. He's just got crazy power, and I did pick him to beat Paulo Renato Jr., and he did eventually get it done, but he looked pretty tentative in that matchup, man. He finally took on a guy that was pretty high level. I know Renato's not the best fighter in the world, but he's still decent. And Aslan looked a little bit tentative. He didn't really look like he was willing to go. And the other time he's fought a really good fighter was in this matchup against Anton Turkalj. And I know in that matchup in the first round, Ivo Aslan rocks and drops Turkalj in that matchup, but Turkalj exposed a massive hole in Aslan's game. And that is that Aslan has no wrestling and no grappling whatsoever. And that's what Turkalj is going to do. Turkalj is still in the UFC because he did the UFC a favor and he fought Jailton Almeida on short notice. Since then he's been disappointing, and I think I picked him to beat Petrino, and I think I picked him to beat Pedro. What is wrong with me? And I'm picking him to beat Aslan again. Like, what is happening with me, man? But the point is, Aslan's got no grappling. I watch his regional fights, man. Trust me, this guy's never been tested before in his career aside from when he lost to Turkalj. I think Turkalj beats him again. I just don't see Aslan having any grappling whatsoever. Do I think Aslan is going to be a fun fighter? Absolutely. But I think Turkalj is good enough to beat him, man. He's going to be able to take him down. He's going to be able to out-grapple him. As long as Turkalj doesn't let his ego get in his head and think that he can strike with Aslan, which he probably could. But Aslan's got that KO power, man. He could probably knock out Turkalj with one punch and then knock me out with the other. But, yeah, I'm just going to go with Turkalj. I think he takes him down. I really do. I don't see Aslan having the grappling to deal with Turkalj again. I don't like the level of competition that like, you can watch these fights, man. Trust me. Tell me these aren't dodgy. Anyway, I'm going to pick Turkalj. I think he gets it done. The next fight is going to be Julio Arce taking on Herbert Burns. I'm going to pick Julio Arce. I know a lot of people do clown Herbert Burns, and it is kind of funny, I guess, but it is also pretty sad because he had some really, really bad leg injuries, man, in his career. And he did lose to Algio by gassing out. But he's just had some horrific leg injuries in his career. Had to get carried out of the ring by his brother. I think there was a mixture of this being gassed and having a leg injury. I think Herbert Burns is also a world champion grappler. I could be wrong. Maybe he is more of a national kind of grappler. But his grappling is lights out. He can submit you at any moment if you get the fight down to the ground. But I don't think Arce is going to be silly enough to get the fight down to the ground. You know what I mean? If you watch the fight against Algio, the whole time all Algio really had to do was escape the submission attempts that Burns was locking up. And he was locking up some tight submission attempts, man. I think Arce though, I think he can fight from range. Stay away from Burns. Just beat up that body the whole round. And I think Burns is going to probably gas out again, man. You know, that gassing problem wasn't just a one-off fight. You know, this is a fight that has kind of happened to him in the past. He's never really had the best cardio, and it was exposed by Algio. He's coming off another injury as well. Burns is just riddled with injuries, man. I think Arce is going to kick his legs. He's going to work his body. I think he just beats him in the striking. You know, Arce is a good striker. That's what he does. This is at 145. I think Arce's fought at 135 and 145 in the past. Yeah, I think he just takes the opportunity to beat Burns here. I think he's going to take him out. I think he's going to finish Burns. Probably in like the second or third round, to be honest with you. Arce's minus 500. Okay. I don't really have to give too much more reason to that then, I guess. Let's move on. Angel Pacheco taking on Caolan Loughran. Don't let me down, Caolan. Don't let me down. Because Caolan is my most confident pick on the card. I do think Caolan's a good fighter. He is pretty boring, kind of, but he's a good fighter, you know what I mean? He did give Taylor Lapala some problems in that matchup, tried to take him down a bit, but just didn't really do anything on the feet. He's a wrestler, grappler for the most part. That's kind of how he gets his fights done. He just out-wrestles smaller fighters, really, especially in this matchup against Festus Oholu, who was just tiny compared to him. He's 5'6" at 135, but this guy's got a lot of build to him, man. He's a pressure-forward guy that will look to take you down. Angel Pacheco is coming off that loss to Dana White's Contender Series, where he just took a lot of damage to Danny Silva, man. But he thugged it out. You know, Dana White, I guess, maybe felt a little bit bad for him because he's 32 years old. He just kind of dealt with a lot in that Danny Silva fight. Kind of put up a pretty strong fight, considering, but of course, since it was such a great fight, Pacheco did get that opportunity, and that loss has looked alright because Silva just somehow managed to beat Josh Culibel. Somehow. Anyway, if we look at the odds here, I do believe Caolan Loughran's a pretty big favourite. He's minus 325. Truthfully, Angel Pacheco, you know, that fight on Dana White's Contender Series was super, super fun, but I just don't think Angel Pacheco is that great. Like, I know he beat Wilson Dragoni, who has been rumoured to be in conversations with the UFC at the moment, but I think Dragoni just lost as well, actually, so he's definitely not anymore. Anyway, I know he knocked out Dragoni, but before that, man, he's just not fighting the best level of competition whatsoever. I've seen him out-wrestled before. I think he'd get out-wrestled again. He didn't deal well with the patience of Danny Silva. I guess in hindsight, though, Danny Silva's striking and boxing is a lot better than I thought it was. But I think Loughran is going to be moving forward. I think he takes down Pacheco. I think he beats Pacheco. You either love him or you hate him. Probably a lot of people will hate Loughran just because of his personality, but I think he gets it done. I think he beats Pacheco. I'd be impressed if he can get a finish here. I mean, since Pacheco's fine at 135, maybe he can. But I'm going to kind of just more side a decision with Loughran's fighting style. He's just kind of a move-forward guy that does get takedowns. And now we've got Conor Matthews taking on Denis Buzukja. I'm actually interested to see what the odds are for this fight because I might have a little bit of a take on this matchup that a lot of people aren't going to like. But I don't think either of these guys are, especially Conor Matthews. I just don't think Conor Matthews is a UFC level fighter. And I'm a little bit struggling with the idea that Denis Buzukja can really make a run in the UFC as well. Conor Matthews is just a guy I've never been impressed with, man. He got absolutely outclassed entirely by Francis Marshall. And then he beats this guy called Andrew Cruz, who's a lot smaller than him, was 8-4. Cool. Beat him in front of Dana White. And then you take on Jair Farias, who hadn't fought for 3 years. And yes, I did pick Jair Farias in that matchup. And Jaya Farias, if he wasn't an idiot, could have won that fight, man. He just didn't do anything in that match. And I think it was just because he didn't fight for years. Matthews won the fight. Good for him, but I just don't think he looks good, man. I don't think his striking's very good. I don't think his wrestling's very good. This guy got completely outclassed by Francis Marshall. Marshall just beat him senseless, and now we know that Francis Marshall probably isn't even UFC level. So what are we doing, man? I don't know. I think Buzukja, I'm going to pick Buzukja. I don't feel good about it, though, because I don't think Buzukja's that great either. But I know for a fact Matthews just is not going to be UFC level. I mean, you can't lose to Francis Marshall like that, man. So yeah, I'm going to pick Denis Buzukja here. He's a pretty good long-rangey striker. I really wouldn't put any money on this fight whatsoever, though. Where are the odds? I actually can't even find them. Okay, we'll move on. Anyway, I think that's probably going to be a pretty slightly closely lined fight. I'm going to pick Buzukja. It has occurred to me that I'm being very negative at the moment, and I think it just probably is because I'm so tired and a little bit stressed as well, because I do have 2 exams coming up in the next 2 days. But let's go on to Andre Petroski taking on Jacob Malkoun. I'm going to pick Jacob Malkoun here. I, once again, have never really been sold on Andre Petroski. I was trying to fade him a lot because I knew he was going to lose eventually, but he just went on this insane run that honestly just makes no sense to me. He beat Nick Maximov, which is nuts, in the first round, and Maximov ended up getting cut from the UFC soonly after. And then he beat Wellington Turman, which is kind of a decent win now. I actually think GM3 has a very good case for winning that fight. But we'll move on. And then he got smoked by Mikhail Pereira. He's coming back against a guy that probably is going to be a pretty decent stylistic matchup for Petroski. You know, Jacob Malkoun is a wrestler, and he's going to be very willing to go down to the ground against Petroski in this one here. He does train with Robert Whittaker, which probably is his big talking point that a lot of people like to talk about. And he isn't that tall for the weight class. He's 5'9", with a 73-inch reach. But he's pretty boring. He wrestles and he doesn't really do anything else. He does have boxing experience as well, which is pretty fun. And he probably will be the better striker in this matchup, because Andre Petroski, all he really does is just throw these wild hooks, man. These wild hooks, like especially against GM3, it was egregious. He was just trying to take his head off, man, with these hooks, then he gassed out. I think Malkoun can outlast Petroski on the feet. I don't think Petroski knocks him out. I think Petroski's got a good chance of maybe submitting him. But I do think Malkoun is going to go out there and just out-wrestle Petroski, survive the submissions, and just outlast Petroski, because Petroski's going to gas. And he's going to gas hard. In a wrestling matchup, he's going to gas real hard in round 3. I know Malkoun, a lot of people kind of probably disagree with me on this one here. But I thought that the DQ was actually quite viable, to be honest with you. Like I know it's Jacob Malkoun and it's Cody Brundage, and people don't like Brundage, I guess, because of this. But why was he throwing an elbow in that position? There was no way it could have landed anywhere but to the back of the head. That's my take on the fight. I thought that the DQ was fair. I think it was a silly strike to throw in the moment. There's nowhere else for the elbow to land from that angle. I don't know what he was doing. But anyway, I think that Malkoun is the favorite. He's minus 200. Okay, another fight where a lot of people are picking the dog. I like Malkoun. I think minus 200 is a little bit wide, to be honest, even though I'm not the biggest Petroski fan. I do think that the line might be a little bit wide for Malkoun, because I'm not that sold on him. He doesn't really do much except for wrestle. He's kind of boring. So we'll see. And now we have Lupita Godinez taking on Virna Jandiroba. Lupita Godinez is one of the best fighters in the world if she fights smart. And she hasn't fought smart for a while. Man, you know, like against Tabitha Ricci, I guess she got the win, and she did have a pretty decent game plan there. She did take down Elise Reed finally. She beat Dakota and Calvillo, but before that she lost to Angela Hill because she just didn't wrestle, and it was so frustrating to watch. She made her fight against Calvillo a lot closer than it needed to be as well because she didn't wrestle, and a lot of people might be saying this might be a matchup where maybe Lupita Godinez probably shouldn't wrestle because Virna Jandiroba is such a dominant grappler. But I think it probably is, you know, because I think Lupita Godinez, as good as she is on the feet, I think that she will be able to just control Jandiroba on the ground without really too much issue, to be fair. Of course, Jandiroba did just beat Marina Rodriguez, where she dominated her in the wrestling, which was very impressive. And she beat Angela Hill herself, who Lupita Godinez did fall up short to. But I do think Godinez is the better wrestler in this matchup. And although Jandiroba might genuinely be the one that initiates the wrestling the most, I think Godinez's wrestling is the real deal, and I think it will be good enough for her to at least reverse positions or defend the takedowns to get her own. So give me Godinez, give me Godinez to win by decision. It seems like most people are going that way. She's minus 190 in the odds. Now we can move on to Bill Algeo taking on Kyle Nelson, who is on a generational run right now, man. Kyle Nelson on a 2-fight win streak. I think both of them over prospects. I mean, the first one was over Blake Builder, who was an older prospect, but was still a prospect at 8-0 at the time, and he beat Fernando Padilla, who just beat Luis Puello. So, yeah, two couple of good wins for Kyle Nelson. And to be fair, he might be able to take this one out as well, because Kyle Nelson, he's a guy that's going to pressure forward, he's going to give you problems. And once again, it is a matchup that Bill Algeo probably could struggle with, because Bill Algeo doesn't fight the best when he's the one that's getting pushed back, when he's the one getting pressured backwards. But I do think that he should still be good enough to beat Kyle Nelson, man. That's just kind of how I feel of like a lot of Kyle Nelson fights. This guy's one fight away from being cut, and then all of a sudden he gets the draw against Doo Ho Choi, which was a robbery. Doo Ho Choi should have taken that, and we haven't seen him since, which is sad. Beat Blake Builder, because Builder fought like an idiot in that fight, to be fair. But then he did beat Padilla fair and square. He's got a good chance of beating Algeo here, but Algeo is a really good grappler, man. Algeo can mix it up in the wrestling if he needs to. I know he doesn't fight that good from the back foot, but he is going to have the range advantage, so he will be able to kind of pop shots off there on the back foot, which he most likely will be on. Algeo is a good fighter. He's on a good run right now as well. He just beat Alexander Hernandez. He beat TJ Brown before that in a pretty fun fight. Arguably beat... no, I think Finley won that fight pretty fair, to be honest. But, yeah, I'm going to go Algeo. He's minus 200 in the matchup. I think Algeo wins a decision. Kyle Nelson's a tough guy. He somehow managed to pull off a 2-fight win streak, which is very impressive over very good opponents. But I think Algeo is one of those guys that, honestly, he might be someone that just kind of stops guys going on runs like Kyle Nelson. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo here. And now we can move on to Nursulton Ruziboev versus Sedriques Dumas. I've seen people on Sedriques Dumas. I don't see it. I think Nursulton Ruziboev does take this one out. I feel like that Ruziboev's biggest advantage in the matchup is Sedriques Dumas' biggest weakness in the fight. And that is the grappling, because Nursulton Ruziboev, if you look at this guy's career, there's a lot of first round finishes. 9 KOs in round 1, 15 subs in round 1. And you go through, man, and a lot of people say, oh, he's got a padded record, this and that. Like, yes, at one point, he was fighting absolutely nobody. But recently, he started taking on some really good opponents. He took on 15-2 Edward Astaramian. Luciano Contini was 13-4. A short notice opponent here was 12-12. Beat Bruno Ferreira by KO, which is impressive because I do consider Ruziboev to be much more of a grappler. And he is an awkward sort of build because he's got really thin legs and a very big upper body, but he's a grappler. And I think he's going to get Dumas down. Dumas, I guess he's a striker for the most part. I think his fight against Brundage was really weird though, because we saw a lot of wrestling. He beat Abu Azaitar, but it wasn't a very impressive performance, to be honest with you. And I just think that Ruziboev, man, on the feet, he's going to probably have more power, or he's definitely going to have more power. Do I think he's as technical at striking as Dumas though? Honestly, probably not. I think that Ruziboev is going to be able to take him down. I think he's going to be able to use that length to submit Dumas. I do think Dumas is pretty cool. I was a big fan of him, but unfortunately recently, like a lot of stuff has kind of come out about him, but I won't talk about that here. But yeah, I do think Ruziboev wins the fight. I do think Ruziboev submits Dumas. Yeah, that's kind of it, really. I know Ruziboev got the mad KO against Bruno Ferreira, but he's not really a striker for the most part. He's a grappler, man. He's a very good grappler. I think we see him get it done here against Dumas. Another thing about Ruziboev is he doesn't really use traditional takedowns. He uses a lot of trips. Or he actually just knocks you down and then submits you, which is pretty fun. Now we've got Chidi Njokwani taking on Rhys McKee, and I do think that Njokwani should be able to end his losing streak here. He's going to be bigger than Rhys McKee. Rhys McKee is just a very, very thin, skinny dude at 170. He's moving up to 185, so he's going to have an extra 7 kilo or 15 pounds to deal with, which is going to be pretty good for him. But do I think he would have filled in that frame just yet? I'm probably going to say no. And this really could just be another one of those cases where the welterweight moves up to 185, which is honestly a little bit of a dead zone in men's MMA and just kind of shows how much better welterweight is than a middleweight. But I don't think that's the case against Chidi, because they have very similar stylistic matchups. And Chidi is a very good Muay Thai striker. He's going to have the reach advantage, which I don't think is something that Rhys McKee has probably ever had to deal with in his career. So we're going to have a striking fight. This fight isn't going to the ground. And if it does, it probably will be Chidi and Joaquin initiating the grappling. But if you look at his losing streak, he lost to Gregory Rodriguez in a fight which he was low-key, potentially on his way to winning at some point because of the massive cut. He lost to Duraev in a pretty close matchup, and then he lost to Mikhail Olachechik, which I think is actually a pretty bad loss, to be honest. But I think he rebounds against McKee. McKee's a fun fighter. I do think that he could maybe go pretty far at 185 if he does get more favourable matchups than this one. But I like Chidi. I think Chidi's a good fighter. I know he's 22-10. He was a pretty good fighter in Bellator. I think he can be a good fighter even at the age of 35 in the UFC. And one thing that I find pretty fun about Chidi is he's got a brother called Anthony Njokuani who you also used to fight in the UFC. And you see Anthony Njokuani in his corner, and Chidi used to be in Anthony's corner back in the day. So they kind of swap roles in a way, I guess. Chidi Njokuani's minus 160, Rhys McKee's plus 140. I think probably pretty fair odds, to be honest with you. And there probably will be quite a few people trying to take that underdog in Rhys McKee. Now Bruno Silva is taking on Chris Weidman, and I feel like they could have given Chris Weidman an easier fight because it doesn't. I don't know. The thing about Chris Weidman is I don't think the UFC should use him to build up a prospect, and they're not doing that here because Bruno Silva is 1-4 in his last five fights. But I will talk about that, and so is Weidman. Silva's just one of those guys that fights anybody, though, man. He fought Alex Pereira, and then he fought GM3, and he did lose. That was a bad loss. Then he beat Brad Tavares, knocked him out. Not a lot of people knock him out. And then Brendan Allen. And then Sharaputdin Magomedov. And he was able to take down Sharaputdin Magomedov. So it's definitely something that you can see that he's working on his wrestling. I think it should be good enough to just kind of avoid the wrestling of Weidman. You know, Weidman did come back after the leg injury against Uriah Hall against Brad Tavares. And I thought Tavares looked really bad. I thought Weidman looked really bad. I know Silva's 1-4 in his last few fights, but I still think he's got a little bit left to go. He's a dangerous striker. I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people forget about Silva. Is this guy got 20 KO wins, man. This guy's not here to mess around. And, yeah, he does have a lot of submission losses, though, to be fair. Maybe this is the UFC thinking, hey, I think we can get Chris Weidman a win here, but honestly, I don't think it is. Man, I feel like there's probably a lot better matchups for Chris Weidman than this one. I'm going to go with Silva, and I'm going to go with Silva by KO. Yeah, it is a hard fight to predict, though, honestly. But I think Silva should be able to keep it on the feet, even though his takedown defense isn't that good. I think his striking, especially at this point in Weidman's career, is going to be a lot better. He's going to be dangerous on the feet as well, man. This guy's got power. He's got bombs in his hands. People just look at that 1-4 record, I feel like, now and just forget about how dangerous this guy really is. He KO'd Brad Tavares. Nobody KOs Brad Tavares, man. I am going to go with Silva. I'm going to go with Silva by KO. Minus 280. That's a bit wide for me, man. Minus 300 on my bookie. Now, we're getting a little bit wide. Getting a little bit wide for this fight. I'm not that confident in it. It's just an odd fight to kind of predict. Now we've got Vicente Luque taking on Joaquin Buckley. I'm going to go with Luque. Buckley is on a bit of a run recently, but I still just don't really know how good he is. Because he was beating Chris Curtis until he got knocked out. You know, or at least he was outlanding Chris Curtis. Then he comes down to 170. KO's Andre Fialho, which is kind of a little bit of a welcome to the club moment, but I actually think Fialho's a really good fighter. He just has a really bad chin, unfortunately. That was a cool win. And he beat Alex Morono, you know, beat him up by decision, and Alex Morono is another fighter that I do respect, that I do think is pretty good, and Buckley goes out there and beats them. But I don't think he beats Luque. Luque's well-rounded, man. This guy's got really good grappling. He's got really good striking. I still worry about that brain injury, though, because it's just really scary. Really, really scary, especially when you fight a guy with crazy power. But I think that Luque's going to be able to mix it up. We saw him mix it up quite well against RDA in a main event recently. So I think he gets it done. You know, we've seen him get KO'd, which is a shame because before that he was Iron Shin Luque. But I don't think he can get KO'd by Buckley. If he does get KO'd by Buckley, I will be quite sad. But I think that Luque can mix it up. I think he can take down Buckley. I think he can out-grapple Buckley. Buckley's a strong dude. He's very well built at 170 as well. But I think that Luque, you know, he's been at this weight class for so long. He's been around at 32 years old. His grappling's good. His striking is dangerous. But I think he uses his grappling in this one here. I think he's going to fight smart. I think he's going to beat Buckley. Just give me Luque. Give me Luque by decision. in a grappling heavy fight. I know that Luque is known for his wars, but I feel like, I feel like maybe he's going to tame it back a little bit since he's been KO'd. He might be a little bit more tentative now. I think we see Luque get it done and get it done by decision. Luque's a slight favorite. He's -120 and Buckley is +103. And now we can move on to the main event. Erin Blanchfield taking on Manon Fiorot. And I feel like this is one of those fights where I think you're going to look silly either way. Because I feel like if Erin Blanchfield wins and you pick Manon Fiorot, it's going to be like, oh, in hindsight, of course Erin Blanchfield was going to be able to out-wrestle Manon Fiorot. She's been able to out-wrestle everybody. But then if Manon Fiorot wins against Erin Blanchfield, it's going to be like, oh, of course Manon Fiorot won. She's the way, way, way better striker. And that's why I'm going to pick Manon Fiorot. I don't feel good about it, to be honest with you. But I was really high on Erin Blanchfield at one point. When I know it was on short notice. But when she beat Jessica Andrade and looked really good on the striking, I was like, man, she's good. She looks good on the striking against Andrade and then got the submission. But then she took on Taila Santos and I was like, man, her striking is really bad, man. Erin Blanchfield's striking is really, really bad. She's a really good wrestler, but her striking, she just doesn't have good technique whatsoever. And Manon Fiorot does, and she's a really good striker. She outstruck Caitlin Kurmanara, formerly Turkalj. She beat Rose Namajunas in that pretty competitive fight on the feet, of course, as well. Beat Maya, beat Maribona Silva, who is now she's still the champion. No, she lost the title fight, of course, my bad. But she beat Ricci by KO. I think Manon Fiorot are 34 years old as well. This is now or never for Fiorot. Erin Blanchfield, she's 24 years old. She's got time to build. Manon Fiorot's 34, and she has honestly probably been deserving a title fight since she beat Caitlin Kurmanara, but just since the way that flyweight is right now, with these constant rematches that we're getting, she hasn't got the shot. And I guess kind of the same for Blanchfield, maybe. They're fighting each other. Even though Fiorot, I think Fiorot's takedown defense is going to be enough. And I feel like even then, the opportunities on the feet are going to be there, because as I said, Blanchfield's striking is just not, it's not good. It's just not good. Fiorot's striking is very good. And I think she's going to outbox Erin Blanchfield. I think she's going to box her up. I think she's going to beat her up. Blanchfield's not that big for the weight class either. She's 5'4". I know she's just been able to outmuscle everyone she's fought so far. Absolutely dominated Molly McCann. But Molly McCann is a strawweight now, you know what I mean? And yeah, I'm just not that sold on Blanchfield anymore. I was really, really, really high on Blanchfield. I still do believe she is a future champion, of course. But I think that Fiorot's just a much, much, much better striker. I think it's night and day. The same argument could be said about Blanchfield and her wrestling, though. But I don't know, we kind of see Blanchfield struggle a little bit in the wrestling against Taila Santos. And, Fiorot's good. Fiorot's really good. And she's really good at striking. It's giving Manon Fiorot. I think she gets it done. But yeah, if Blanchfield wins and dominates, I wouldn't be that surprised. I would feel like a little bit of an idiot. Hopefully you guys didn't mind this video too much. I realize it is super, super rushed. Erin Blanchfield is all over the place on the odds. About -190, -180, -160. Fiorot is the underdog, of course. I'm sorry that video was a little bit over the place. It's 10:22 p.m. I'm going to do a practice exam for my exam tomorrow, and then I'm going to go to sleep. So yeah, hopefully you guys didn't mind that one too much. I'll be all back in action next week. See you guys in the next one.